Hey everybody, welcome to day 24, part 3. I'm going to play a short video for you from Dr. John Campbell. You will see that the video came out yesterday. I want you to pay attention to what he's talking about. He's talking about why are black people dying more. Guys, remember going back to day 1, we talked about vitamin D3, we talked about your digestion, etc., etc., etc. Then a few days ago, I did a prediction on New Orleans. Please check that out. Somebody made a comment, in my the bottom of the video saying something like, yeah, well, white people are always right. I'm not sure if he's accusing me of being racist somehow. I'm not sure how. But I made a prediction that New Orleans was going to be slammed particularly hard. And I made a specific reference to the fact that vitamins A and D are extremely consequential in the immune response. I explained how and why people with darker skin have issues with vitamin D absorption. I put links up top explaining this about how much more sunlight they need. I explained that when you're obese, you need more vitamin D. When you have digestive issues, you need more vitamin D. I explained if you have certain gene polymorphisms, you need more vitamin D. I explained that in socioeconomic circumstances, you're not going to be supplementing with vitamin D3 because you don't have the money to do it. I don't know how many other ways I can put this to you that vitamin D3 really, really matters. And also, I also went into talking about anemia. Again, I did a video yesterday talking about specifically how this is working with iron. I made some corrections there, but I promise you that anemia still matters here because iron is needed in order to produce hemoglobin. And who are the most likely people to be anemic? Women, and especially black women. Now, I want you to listen to this doctor who put this out yesterday and listen to what he's saying for the first time yesterday. And you can see the date down below.
And I only heard this for the first time this morning, actually, and I've been doing a bit of work on it since. But the Surgeon
There's
General
Dr. John Campbell right there.
States,
you can see the date right there.
African Americans are more affected than white Americans. Now, what are we saying here? Are we saying that African Americans are getting more infection than white Americans? Well, I don't think we're saying that. I think the infection rates are probably the same in both. But African Americans seem to be getting more complications, more severe disease, and more deaths. Now, a bit of support for this. Data here is from Michigan, Chicago, New Orleans, East Boston area, where the deaths have been reported in terms of the background, the racial, ethnic background of the individuals. Now, for example, Chicago, 68% of deaths were in African Americans. And that compares to the African American population only representing 30% of Chicago's population. So 30% of the total population of Chicago is African American, 68% of deaths. And there's a figure there, as of Monday, the 6th of April. 1,969 black Chicagoans died. That's a lot of people. 891 white Chicagoans. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. Apologies if you come from Chicago. Latinos and Asians as well. Now, the question is, of course, why? Why is this? Well, the comment I've seen so far has been quite sociological, socio-economic reasons. And we know there are health inequalities. We know there's a high prevalence of chronic illness. So heart disease, diabetes, obesity, hypertension are all more common in the African American population. And there are inequalities in access to health. So there's a lot of potential socio-economic explanations for this. Another one is that African Americans often use more public transport. They often work in the care sector. So these are quite possible, but what no one has mentioned so far, and I don't know how much this is a factor, but no one has mentioned the vitamin D.
The what?
So I'm mentioning it now. And I think
nobody's mentioned it?
Widely publicised. Let me give you a simple scientific fact.
Please.
White skin makes vitamin D more quickly in sunshine than dark skin.
Oh, haven't heard that before.
Most vitamin D comes from sunlight exposure on the skin. Not so much vitamin D comes from our diet. It's a fat-soluble vitamin. Are we back? Yeah. It's a fat-soluble vitamin. So the darker someone's skin is, the slower they're going to make vitamin D. So I think that is probably a big factor in this. I don't know what we would need to do, well, what authorities in the United States would need to do, is they would need to do extensive testing of the blood levels of vitamin D in African Americans and compare that to the levels of vitamin D in white Americans and compare that with the morbidity and mortality that we are seeing. That's what would need to be done. But especially when you're thinking about somewhere like Chicago, I mean, it's the end of the winter. It's been a long, dark winter up in Chicago. People haven't been exposed to the sun, and people with black skin, when they are exposed to the sun, make vitamin D more slowly than people with white skin. And to me, this is important because we know, we've looked in previous videos, there's vitamin D receptors in the immune system. We know this. We know that lack of vitamin D causes immunodeficiency. It's been empirically demonstrated with studies on influenza. But the theory and the rationale for vitamin D having a big effect on immunity is there.
All right, let's just stop it there. First of all, just recognize how long it took him to say that. I mean, the fact that this guy has 311,000 views and I'm getting like 60 views a day is insane. Was anything said there that you didn't hear me say? Then didn't I say it in about 30 seconds instead of 6.5 minutes? I hope so. Didn't I also bring up other factors here that has to do with situations dealing with the black community that people should be aware of, not just measuring vitamin D levels and everything we've been talking about for 3.5 weeks? I think so. So guys, the whole idea here, staying ahead of the curve, being ahead of everybody, talking shit that really matters. And I'm probably now going to be banned from, promoting this video because I said shit. So now you're going to hear me cursing the rest of the fucking video. So the bottom line is recognizing the things we've been talking about. What are you moving? Are you digesting well? Are you making the attempt to lose weight? Are you doing all these things we talked about? Blah, 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 blah. Let's get off that topic. Let's talk real quickly about today's topic, which is it time that we start having a different conversation about what's going on? So when we start looking at things that are promising for treatments and that are alleviating symptoms in the hospital, when will the tide turn into everybody's dying to, hey, there's a glimmer of hope here and the opportunity to go back to business as usual? When will that conversation start to be had? Because right now we're looking at the efficacy of hydroxychloroquine with Z-Paks. We're looking at the efficacy of nitric oxide. I'll put links to these guys. So here's a link for the efficacy of hydroxychloroquine with Z-Paks. I'll put a link right there. I'll put another one for nitric oxide. That will be in the description because it's not a video, it's a document. So that'll be in the description. I'll also put it in my newsletter. We're also looking at the efficacy of ivermectin, which is another drug that's showing strong promise. That will also be up here. It's a video. I'll put that up here. We're looking at the effects of high-dose vitamin C therapy. I'll put that video right here. We're also looking at something that my friend David Green sent me yesterday, the tuberculosis vaccine. Fascinating research. That will be in the description. It's an article. Please read it. This is promising. Now, guys, we can go on and on top of what we already know about Hey everybody, if there's one time that nature's calling us out to be really proactive with our health, it's now. Because if we look at who's actually being affected here, there is no question it is the obese, and it is the elderly, and it is people with underlying conditions, okay? It is the smokers, it is the people that generally have stuff going on that they need to pay attention to, and yet it's halting the entire economy. Everybody is being stopped from doing what they're supposed to be doing. So I am not disagreeing that people need to stop what they're doing. What I am saying is, shouldn't the narrative start to change now that we see so much promise in effective therapies, now that we understand who's actually being effective and who really needs to be taking precautions here, and at the end of the day, start to implement caution in society that would make sense anyway, right? Social distancing, making sure you're washing your hands, making sure that you're doing certain protocols, especially if you're highly susceptible to this disease, maybe going into stores with masks on, doing all these things. But again, if the narrative doesn't start to change after we reach our peak around the middle of April and things start to come down, we need to start hearing in news this type of stuff about what's good and what we now know, instead of the constant, everybody's going to die. Because what we don't see, all over media is this stuff about how do you bolster the immune system? What is it about, heat therapy? What is it about all of these things that we've talked about, all of these hacks that have well-founded research? Finland has by far the most well-practiced habits of going into saunas. That's why they call them Finnish saunas. Okay, look at Finland and their rates. This is in MedCram's updates, by the way. If you've been watching, they are talking about Finland, and they're talking about, holy cow, like virtually nobody's getting this and virtually nobody's dying, right? Because of the sauna use. Like, that's certainly one reason why. And by the way, how much vitamin D are they getting up in Finland? So the point is that, and by the way, if you're like, yeah, well, that's anecdotal and this and that, go back and look at Kellogg's research on hydrotherapy, heat therapy, and what they noticed something like 100 years ago. Again, that's a part of a MedCram video. These are medical doctors talking about medical research that was done a long time ago, and they're actually mad at themselves. They're actually criticizing themselves, saying, isn't it amazing how we have these therapies that have so much efficacy and they're just done away with? That why did we stop practicing them? Well, it's this thing called big pharma, guys. When you have, multi billion-dollar companies that put out medicine and expect to make money on their medicine, the use of, heat, like getting into hot baths and things like this, certainly won't be the preferred treatment when you have to do this thing called make a profit. But let's not even go there. Bottom line, guys, let's just take care of ourselves, follow the research. Let's hope that the narrative starts to change, because if it doesn't, I personally am going to start getting really concerned about what is going on here. But I'm going to put up all the links. I'm going to put the research down below. You can look into it yourself. Again, this is positive. This is a positive narrative. So we had a tough week to get through. A lot of death. It's going to be all over the news. But I'm going to be concerned if in the next 10 days we don't start to see the narrative change for a more positive message, and for us to start getting back to normal, certainly by the end of May. All right, everybody, that's enough from me. I hope you enjoyed it. Sorry that the other guy's video was so long, but I just wanted to make the point. Guys, if you think I'm being racist or somehow, here's my point. I will happily donate to the fund that brings as much vitamin D3 down to New Orleans and anywhere in the Black community that needs the vitamin D3. I am that confident that it will make a difference, and for a million reasons. I mean, just go on to PubMed and read vitamin D3 and its effects on the immune system. It's in charge of over 5,000 metabolic processes in the body, most of which has to do with immunity. So again, I am trying to put this out so that people are aware, so that if you have friends and family that have darker skin. Make sure they're taking vitamin D3. Make sure that they're aware of these issues with anemia. Make sure that they're aware of their blood work. Make sure that they're aware of what's going on with morbid obesity. Make sure that they're what's going on with food quality and digestion. Guys, this is a human problem. So let's act as humans and use human reason in order to navigate. All right, everybody, have a great rest of the day.